And welcome once again to another episode of the Horizon Roundtable. I am Bob McDonald, and you can find me on Twitter at Bob McDonald. And joining me is my co host, Matt Dudek.
Hey there, everybody.
And Matt, of course, can be found on Twitter at GrizzTalkOU. And you can find us on Twitter as well, the podcast, at HorizonRT. And you can find us on Facebook at Horizon Roundtable. And Matt, I'm actually really excited about this particular episode. Not because I was ever a part of anything like this, because I went to Cleveland State, although that may be subject to change here in the near future. I wanted to talk a little bit. Today we actually have a member of the Grizz gang with us, so I'm actually looking forward to that. And Michael, let me make sure if I get the. I apologize if I butcher the name. Michael Presdeninzi.
That's actually perfect. Yeah, a lot of people mess it up.
Outstanding. All right, so I was paying attention. So we have Michael Presdeninzi on for representing the Grizz gang. Naturally, I was hoping to get somebody from the Valhalla Vanguard on because you know how much I like those guys, but just kind of wasn't in the cards. So
It's
um,
like for them where they talk a good game and then no one shows up.
I don't.
Yep.
I know there's going to be some changes coming forth because I know some of the founding members have since moved on and they're looking for some they're going to be they're kind of in the process of moving into some new leadership, so I'm sure that they will definitely be representing in the near future, crossing fingers of course. But I wanted to talk about I brought Michael on as representing the Grizz gang because obviously um, one of the things that, as we know across the entire college basketball landscape, is this phenomenon of student sections. You see them everywhere else. You see them at the Power Five conferences. Um, we don't have a lot of those in this conference. I mean, and if we do, it's usually something that's kind of inorganic that hasn't really, that was perpetuated by an athletics department that didn't really catch on with the rest of the students. And the reason actually I brought all of these things up was that for the first time in my memory, Cleveland State, and actually I shouldn't say this because the first time in recent memory, because and I will say there was an attempt made in early 2000s to do this, but Cleveland State, a group of Cleveland State students have actually put together their own student section. Um, and like I said, there was an attempt to do this in the early 2000s and didn't really take. And then it was kind of at the post of the Berserkers, which was kind of an athletics driven type of thing, but still had a handful of individuals who were very involved in that up until they graduated, and then it kind of petered out. But now, that's kind of, but now apparently there's a bit of a resurgence, and they have decided on the name Vicious Fikes. I'm sure we'll get into the a conversation about that a little later on. But the whole point of the episode obviously is to talk about student involvement, especially in the face of the fact we have especially in the face of kind of the makeup of the Horizon League schools, where you're talking about primarily commuter school students whose primary goal is to get to school, fight for parking, go to class, and go home. Um, so it's nice to have somebody like Michael on who's a part of a group that kind of goes beyond that. So Michael, tell us a little bit about kind of you know what's the Grizz Gang? Grizz Gang. Obviously, we've talked about a little bit on the show, but talk to us a little bit about kind of how it came about, what you guys are up to these days, and what you got planned moving forward.
Yeah, so the good thing itself actually got created by our now advisor, Anthony Galena, and he, along with a couple of his buddies, were really into sports, into the involvement of the school, and so they kind of took it upon themselves of creating this. And back then, I'm pretty sure athletics helped fund them and recreate what they did. And since then, since he graduated, he came back and he now works for Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
And since he's here, he started this advisor position where he can kind of look after us and tell us what we're doing right and everything. And we kind of take it from there. He lets us be a very kind of self-employed, and we only go for him if we need help, really. But he's always there and kind of created that atmosphere for us to join and have a place where we can actually create something like that.
Sure. Anthony, and I can tell you how hands-on Anthony is, of course. If the name Anthony Galina sounds familiar to you, folks, listeners to the podcast, Anthony participated in our second annual Battle Royale. And so, as I understand, and as he states correctly, he is the gentleman who is the flag carrier for Oakland. So, it's good that you have a guy who's an advisor, who's who knows the group, and it has, from what it sounds like, as much passion as the folks who are in this group.
Well, let me tell you guys just a little bit more backstory, because I was at Oakland when Grizz Gang started with Anthony. I met Anthony as a member of the pep band originally. Anthony played trumpet in the pep band.
He did.
And and the pep band is long. I mean, going back to as far back as I can go is 2002, 2003. The pep band has always been full and crazy. And that's always been a strong suit for Oakland game day, but we didn't have a student section. So Anthony stopped playing in the pep band, or might have graduated. I don't remember how that worked out. But he really started with a couple other people, Matt Thomas. I know Matt's a listener of the show. And they started trying to organize a student section to go with the pep band, because we had a very good dance team. We had a pep band, but we just didn't have a student section to be crazy, except for big games. Kids would show up for the really important big games, or whoever, but there wasn't anything consistent. And Anthony and his crew really set out. Initially, they were almost like part of the cheer team. They came out waving big flags and banners. At the beginning of the game, they were like a spirit squad almost, and then that turned into what we now know as the Grizz Gang.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
So, it's a little backstory. I was there.
See, there you go. First-hand witnesses.
Saw it.
But yeah, and it's interesting. And Ben, I'm actually also very glad you brought up the pep band, because I know that for a lot of circles within the Horizon League, that has also been a big component of, I want to say, what I would call the spirit element of a particular school. And that's something and obviously that's something that Oakland itself has pretty much locked down, and is, and I know I've long established that Grizz Gang is kind of the gold standard in terms of the conference's student sections. I mean, the way it's organized, and as involved as you guys are, and that obviously that's something for any student group to aspire to.
And I don't know if you saw last week, I tweeted, someone had tweeted me, something about, Grizz Gang's got like, a couple hundred people, a game. I actually got official numbers from athletics. Grizz Gang averaged 412 kids a game. Wow. That's an average.
I was kind of impressed by that number.
That is amazing. Wow.
That is more than a lot of our schools are putting in the gym regularly. They may say, they inflate their numbers with, season ticket holders. But no, they had 412 kids attending a game last year on average.
That is amazing. And I think that is something, and I've long, and obviously I have long, considering, the arena is about, what, a 4,000 seat arena, that's a big deal.
Yeah. Well, it is. And I mean, in that number, you consider the fact that the Horizon League hates Oakland right now for never winning the conference tournament when they needed to, so they won't give us marquee games when our students are in session. We don't get Detroit with our kids. We're on break the past couple of years, and it's probably because we haven't done our job. It's a punishment. So that's a pretty outstanding attendance number for our students, and I give the Grizz Gang, leadership, like Michael, a lot of credit. They do good work, and it's not just as an Oakland fan or Oakland people talking about it. You see the coaches in their polls talk about how much they hate going into Oakland. Unfortunately, the team hasn't been doing their job at home as much lately, but for a long time, Oakland, the arena is a terrible place for teams to walk into. It's loud, there's energy, and the team would play well there. The team needs to do their job.
And it's such an intimate venue, obviously, that all that noise and everything is kind of magnified.
Oh yeah.
Well, I'm glad you brought up I'm glad you brought up the Oakland Detroit Mercy game because it is on break. Michael, how do you guys address those break games? Because obviously you don't have a lot of students that are going to be on campus. So how do you guys address those games? Because obviously there's a challenge in, okay, school's out of session. Do I want to come back on campus, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so it's definitely hard. And we've tried to play with some ideas here and there, but at the end of the day, with us being a commuter school, it's okay to get some people back. But if you're not commuting, you're living like 2 or 3 hours away. There's no in between really. Mm-hmm. So we've tried to kind of focus on, in a way, doing either small giveaways or something involvement wise, where those people who do live 20, 30 minutes away see it worth it to come out to the game.
Sure.
But it's very hard. I know some people stay on campus over break, so it's kind of just playing who's around, who can come. You're going to get your more dedicated fans there. Obviously, people like free stuff, so they're going to come out if we have a good amount of things that we can provide for them. But with it being over break, people are trying to spend that with their family, or they're trying to take that away from school. They don't exactly want to come back. Sure. So I've never agreed with it, and I've been hurt the past couple of years trying to organize something, especially for that huge of a game. We're not able to do anything, but hopefully we're able to get out to Callahan this year with a good amount of people, because that's not over break, I believe, and we'll hopefully be able to make that like a second home game for us.
Mm-hmm. Sure. In terms of now in terms of traveling, how much do you guys travel? I know, I think Anthony had mentioned that he gets out to he gets out to traveled out to games. Matt, I know you had mentioned back in the day making the trips out to South Dakota for what was then, when the Oakland was a part of the Summit League tournament, being a part of those games. So, what's traveling like for the group as a whole?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things. Obviously, our leaders themselves, it's a very interesting group of people, and we all do this because we enjoy going to the games and being around that atmosphere. So last year, our leaders ourselves, no funding or anything, like 8 of us or so, went down to UIC and spent the weekend in Chicago to watch them play. So that was just us. But last year, we also got donated a bus to Xavier. We're trying to make those trips that are day trips in a way, not too small or not too far, not too short. Obviously, we go to Detroit every year, but
sure.
Like this year, I think we're looking at a couple different games. We wanted to go to Northern Kentucky, obviously, just because we have fun with those guys. But
sure.
It's on a Thursday this year, so it's kind of impractical to try to get people to bus down there. So we're looking at Saturday games to try to get a bus out, kind of spend the day in the city. It kind of gives the students an experience to explore somewhere else, see a basketball game, have some fun. Mm-hmm. So we definitely try. I think we're going to be going to the tournament at the end of the year as well. We're trying to make sure our funding gets through the year so that we can provide students some transportation down there for that. Mm-hmm. But obviously the big part is funding is the hardest part with traveling.
Yeah, that's something that for a long time Oakland's been very good about, and I think that's a big reason why we have the student success we have at Oakland is they've always been really good about coming up with funding. I remember going a couple times to Fort Wayne when we were in the Summit League on bus trips, and they had a whole block of seats. All you had to do was get your ticket a couple days before. There was 60 passes or whatever they'd hand out, and they literally handed out passes. You got to the school that morning, there was breakfast. You got on the bus, you drove to Fort Wayne, watched movies, whatever. Took the game in, there was a boxed lunch, took the game in, then got on the bus, there was pizza waiting for you, and they bussed you back. It was a long day, but those trips, that's how you make long-term fans. And that's something Oakland has done really well. And I've heard that they've sold more season tickets this year than any year past. Yeah. You're building a true fan base.
Exactly.
And that's the important thing, I think.
And I think
I know.
Oh, go ahead.
I know I've heard a lot of those Glory Day stories from Anthony as well, where they do those trips and everything, and it's kind of been on a decline a little bit with funding. And I think now with Steve as our AD, we're kind of turning that around, and moving back into a positive direction.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully we'll be doing that more. When we went to Xavier, a donor, like I said, gave us that bus, and then we ended up getting pizza for the students. So it was kind of like that. It's not as intense or as organized, but it's still there. And I think we're trying to turn that around to make it back to what it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Matt, I'm glad you brought up the kind of connection between student fandom and eventual season ticket ownership. I know when I had Scott Garrett from the athletic director at Cleveland State on, we had talked a little bit about kind of how important having the student fans becomes in terms of translating that into future ticket sales. And I know his big concern was the fact that when he walked in the door, the first question he asked was, okay, who's the Cleveland State student super fan? And nobody had an answer for him. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a bunch of us weirdos on social media who are fans, but I'll be honest with you, I haven't set foot on Cleveland State's campus as a student in 14 years. So, and that was when I was in grad school, and there's a lot of the fans could say the same thing. So, but I'm also glad you brought up the fact. Now you mentioned the new athletic director. I know that there has been a transition in leadership at Oakland, and I know there's been. And so, how has that relationship been with the new athletic director in terms of the Grizz Gang?
Yeah, so we actually last year met with him quite a bit. We set up like monthly meetings or so, kind of just to talk about, because that's his first year. He wants to know what we're doing, what we're about before he commits to us with anything.
Sure.
So we met with him a lot. Kind of told him what we were doing. We planned our events how we did, and we just told him how it went, and he kind of saw our commitment, and then we went from there. And now they kind of help us out a little bit more this year with funding reasons, and they also have a new head of marketing there as well, who's also all about student involvement. So this year we're meeting with him a little bit more, and since we're pretty much working under athletic marketing, because that's what really essentially student sections are, is just marketing. Mm-hmm. So we're talking with him quite a bit, and I've established a pretty good relationships with both of those guys, and their commitment to us and understanding what we need is something that's also, like I said, getting us into the right direction.
Sure. So outside of athletics, I mean, in terms of funding, do you guys do like fundraisers or anything like that, or is it just something that you guys pay out of pocket when the needs arise?
We do a couple different things. Every year we'll do like a frozen yogurt fundraiser, like local businesses where you can go and 10% of profits go to us, or how that kind of fundraiser works. Mm-hmm. But then on top of that, we have our VIP package that we offer for students, and it's kind of like an extra step as the Grizz Gang, because all of our games at Oakland are free to get into for students. There's no charge, there's no season tickets or anything, which is very nice. So we offer an upgrade sort of thing where we design a shirt, we'll get a couple extra little swag pieces. Like this year we have a fanny pack, a koozie, kind of like the essential tailgate type items. And we'll throw that in a bag and kind of offer students that, $20, you get this little package. We get the money. We'll start throwing these events a little bit more, and we go from there. So it comes from the students. It comes from donors. I know we have a couple people who are alumni who donate to the Grizz Gang regularly. And then in November, we also do a philanthropy month at Oakland, where the student organizations who get the most amount of money or the most amount of donors get a set amount of money from the philanthropy department.
Sure.
So that's our fundraising. Since we are an official student organization as well, we get funding from the school through from our student activities funding board and all of that. So we partner with a lot of the organizations who do the bigger, like casino night type events or carnivals, things like that. We'll partner up with them to kind of get more involvement on campus, because that's what they're all about as well. So we have a lot of different areas that we have to reach out to all of those different areas, because we don't have a set amount from anyone really that is sufficient enough to do anything big. So a couple events will go through athletics, and then one event we're actually planning the home opener tailgate against Goshen. We're partnering up with a couple of those organizations like Student Programs Board, Student Activities Funding Board, all of them, Student Congress as well, and using their funds as well. They get out there, they get advertisement, and we make those events happen for students.
Nice.
So it's all over the place.
Okay. It sounds like it.
Yeah.
Michael, VIPs get early entrance into games too, is that correct?
Yeah, so with the fact that we actually work with athletics as well, we have a little ID card that we give out to the students who become VIPs, and it gets them in, I think, an extra half an hour earlier than everyone else can get into games. So that's kind of cool for students who want to get involved. They can get in even earlier and sit up front, kind of up where the more rowdier group of kids are, and it's pretty interesting to see who can actually come out and the amount of people who actually support the VIP program.
Sure, absolutely. You mentioned kind of the rivalries a little bit. I know, and again, this is why I was hoping I was going to get one of the guys from Valhalla Vanguard on. When you kind of, I guess, because there's kind of a dearth of these student sections, it's kind of, I don't know if you agree with me, but it's kind of a bummer that here you guys are, and there's not a whole lot else out there. There's not a lot of people to talk smack to, really.
Yeah, I was very excited when NKU started coming at us on Twitter, because we actually had a reason to be on Twitter. And I was hoping they'd be on here as well, just because like I said, I love talking to them. Throughout the year, I know they're going through some transitions, but throughout the year we got really close with them. And I know a couple years ago our president went out there and actually stayed with a couple of the people from there.
Nice.
So they're very friendly. They're great, and I think that's what makes it fun, because as a student section, I would say our rival is NKU, but as a team, our rival is Detroit Mercy. So it's kind of cool because it creates that secondary rivalry where obviously Mercy is going to be our biggest game and everyone's going to go crazy. But then for the students, it's like when we play NKU, it's just as fun because you're on Twitter, you're going back and forth, and like there's such a community there around the game that at the end of the day, like you can talk so much trash during the game, and at the end of the day, they all like high fives and having fun. So
yeah. You meant obviously Detroit Mercy. Allegedly they have a student section, right? Section 313.
Yeah, they do. They don't have any presence really online or anything, but they're definitely there at the game when we get there.
They're only there for one game a year. It's the Oakland game.
Yeah.
Really? No.
They don't show up. No, have you ever watched video from a Mercy game? There's nobody there, which is really too bad, especially
except for the guy who reads the book.
Well, book guy comes to both. He comes to OU games too. He just doesn't. You see, it's not as easy to spot him at an OU game when there's actually people.
But I gotta ask, is book guy on Twitter?
I don't think so.
I have no idea.
He's too busy reading. I'm sorry, book guy.
I mean, but really, it's too bad that Detroit Mercy doesn't have fans. Not only as an Oakland, that for the rivalry's sake. Like I said, we love. I love seeing the back and forth with Valhalla Vanguard and all that. But the team deserves that. And I mean, they show up for the one game against Oakland, and it's so obvious. Half of them don't have Detroit Mercy gear even on. They're just there to be drunk and stupid, and they end up getting themselves in a lot of trouble. And then those kids don't come back for a year. And it's like, man, if you guys spent a little bit of time and actually organized and could get some fan support, your fans wouldn't be an average age of 65. And, we talked about, building future season ticket holders. And I think that's just another thing hurting Detroit Mercy. We know they have an older fan base. I joke about it, but it's really true. And you're not getting students because they literally come out for one day, they're drunk, they flip people off, and they just act stupid, and then they leave. Like, that's not how you build a fan base.
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead, Michael.
Going out to those games, they are there for sure. Like you said, there's a lot of Red Wing gear. There's a lot of Pistons jerseys. There's a lot of other things that aren't Detroit Mercy, but they're pretty rowdy in a way where it's what we don't want to be. So it starts to bring out a worse side in us that we have to try to kind of control. And being how we are and how we see our student organization, we make sure people aren't flipping people off. So as soon as we hear something like that, we turn around and tell them to sit down. And being in that Callahan Hall is probably the worst atmosphere for us.
Wow. But
us the whole time.
Oh, jeez.
It's interesting.
So yeah, yeah, and it from what it looks like, that's kind of a similar environment for a lot of these other Horizon League schools. Wright State doesn't have this problem for reasons that escape me, because they don't, they're, even though they do have a rather older fan base, they do still show up to the games. I think but at Cleveland State there kind of is a similar. They don't even have a rival. I mean, even there's not even really a rivalry to latch on to, or at least there isn't in the minds of the students.
Right.
And so it becomes a matter of when the students actually even show up. I know a couple of years back when I was actually covering the games, they had this athletics had this concept called Viking Village, and they brought students in during the games, and the student, I mean, there was no drunken disorderly behavior, very well behaved. They were a very well mannered group. The problem was they all looked like they were bored as hell. I mean, and that's I guess that's why I'm highly encouraged that a new kind of student section group has kind of built up. That finally a group of students finally said enough is enough. We actually want to pay attention to this team. We want to get into these games. We want to do all of these things, and we just don't want to sit there on our butts and just check our Instagram feed. So I'm actually very encouraged by that, and I do hope that hopefully I hope they replicate kind of the successes of the existing student groups around the Horizon League. And hopefully get a little bit more support as time moves on.
Yeah, I hope so too, because like I said, I was so excited when NKU started coming at us, and seeing that there's a new one coming up. We've been trying to interact with them on Twitter as the same as NKU has.
I'm sorry, who's this again? I'm sorry, the CSU folks?
Yeah.
Okay,
so the fact that they're up and coming, is very exciting for me, because we love that atmosphere, and we've been trying to interact with them because we want to see what it's like, and we want to show them how, even though there's a lot of trash talk, it's a lot of fun, and we can make a community together, and we bounce ideas back and forth with NKU's student section, and kind of just see what works for each other, and grow from there, because at the end of the day, we are all out here trying to support a team and trying to make that atmosphere what we want it to be. So if they're doing something right, we'll take it from them. If we're doing something right, they'll take it from us. And we just hope that expands through more of the league, honestly.
Sure. Now, we mentioned the transition going on with the Valhalla Vanguard, and obviously, as an organization, Grizz Gang has gone through multiple leadership changes. How as a group have you guys handled that kind of transition? I mean, I'm sure it helps that you have a kind of one of the founders as your advisor, I'm sure.
Yeah, recruitment's hard. It's hard to get students that involved, because there's a lot more that goes into a student section than just being a student section.
Sure.
And a lot of people don't realize that, I guess. So we've had our up years and down years, and the past 2 or 3 years now, we've pretty much had the same team just kind of flopping roles around. And a couple people graduating. This year we have 8 people on our actual board right now, and 7 of us are either 4th or 5th year. So
Gotcha.
It's very hard sustainability is very hard. And right now, one of our biggest things we're trying to do is recruit that younger class. We have a couple student athletes who are actually on the track team that we're trying to get a little bit more involved, which is going to be hard because they're student athletes. But I just had somebody else reach out as well, saying that they were their high school's president and student section president, and wants to get more involved. So
Nice.
Recruiting that younger class is really important. And I think the way we do it, we pretty much transition president and treasurer every year so that new people can come in, where it's not like after 4 years of one person doing it, it's completely new. It's like every year somebody refreshes and gets to learn and gets to transition that to the next person. And I think that's important, and trying to recruit that younger class and saying, student sections are fun and getting out there, but there's so much planning that goes into tailgates and bus trips. There's so much more than just cheering that it's hard to get across to people.
I think the biggest thing too is your team has to win, especially at home. And right now,
Yeah.
Oakland hasn't been winning a ton of games at home, so you get these kids that put in everything they've got. You leave a game exhausted from cheering and just trying to help push your team to that point. But when they don't win consistently, you get kids that come back. They come to one game, they're excited. The team loses and they don't come back. And I know that Campy's aware of that. I know the team's aware of that. It's not that it's their job to win, but they need to win at home. And that really helps in building a fan base. And for you guys that are fourth and fifth years in the Grizz game right now, you've seen success at home. So that's what roped you in. And I think that we're struggling to get younger people at Oakland because we're not winning enough at home right now, and the team has to do a better job of that. And it's something that Campy's talked about. And I think that's something that the Valhalla Vanguard does have going for itself. It's something Wright State has going for its fan base is they win at home. And if Oakland can't start winning more games at home and make it like they used to be where the arena was just an advantage, you're going to lose students that way. It's hard to get people that are totally bought into a losing team. It doesn't work that way. And I think that's going to be Cleveland State's struggle is when they do get a couple students to come check it out. If the team's no good on the floor, they're not going to want to come back.
Well, I mean, in that case, that Cleveland State is a unique situation because Cleveland State for 4 years has been absolutely terrible. I mean, you can't forget students coming. You can't even get regular people to come. But yeah. I think I get, and I actually take this kind of if you look at Jared Calhoun at Youngstown State. And I think it looks like Dennis Gates is doing the exact same thing at Cleveland State, where they're kind of trying to build the rapport with the students in the community in general to kind of sell this growing process with in terms of follow us. You're gonna see you'll we may not be much now, but have some faith in us and make it a little bit more than lip service. So I'd be interested in seeing kind of and you see kind of that dynamic moving a little working a little bit on the Youngstown State side. Obviously their improvement last year, they had some improvements last year, and perhaps that's kind of the end goal for Cleveland State as well. But I'm glad you mentioned kind of the winning in Oakland, because obviously says right now we're and I want to kind of break this out a little bit, is that this week, because we're getting close to the regular season, we've got we've already got teams playing actual exhibition games and up to and including Oakland. Which brings me to my first question: 61-59 against Rochester.
Yeah.
All right, hold on. You want this, Michael? You can take it.
Well, I know you also watched the post game interview and you had some words about that. So I agree with Matt in the way where it Campy always talks us down after we think what the heck happened. He kind of tries to explain it and say why it happened the way it did, and it helps to an extent. And you look at it and say, okay, he played a lot of people the first half. He did this and he did that. Like, we get it, but at the same time, like, you hit less than 50% from free throw line is absolutely terrible.
And 3 from 18 from the 3-point line. Holy crap, that's atrocious.
And you're going to get that with a young team.
Sure.
It's scary, and it's the first game in the arena, seeing what we're all about. So the fundamentals are scary. The gameplay itself, you can understand from his perspective, but those stats don't lie, and it's a scary thing.
However, I will say this: that front court should scare the crap out of literally everybody in the Horizon League. Daniel Oladapo had a double-double. Brad Brechting had 19 and 9. I mean, Xavier Hill-Mays pulled down 9 boards. I think the score kind of belies that.
If they've been saying this, if Oakland can get anybody to run the point with any sort of even average abilities, this team's going to be good. However, at that game, nobody ran the point to even the average ability, and Campy came down on him. Kangu, who they're trying to turn into a point guard who isn't one, had a terrible game. He didn't look like he knew how to do anything. I'm concerned because Campy's gone back to the dribble drive. And the lane is super congested. Well, when you're playing with 3 bigs that can outplay pretty much anybody in the conference and the lane's congested, it's going to make it tough. I'm really thinking he's got to open up some spacing. What do I know? I'm not Campy. But in my opinion, he's got to open up some spacing and let the bigs work. And right now, I don't know how they could work down there. It's just so congested with those three, but those three together are so scary. We saw moments of it. I mean, Oladapo, his motor doesn't stop. That he impressed the hell out of me. And I think he's going to be a major advantage. And all we need is average point guard play. We did not get it from Kangu this week. But again, he's learning, so maybe that'll change. But he's also supposed to be a good shooter. I would love to see maybe him getting off the ball faster. And, maybe it is time for CJ Gettelfinger. He looked pretty good when he wasn't trying to make stupid passes, which is what he does. So, other than that, the behind the back moment, he looked pretty confident. Maybe it's going to be him. If not, it's got to be somebody. But this team's not ready yet. That's for sure.
So. And by the way, Oakland was not the only team that already had an exhibition and didn't also barely squeaked by their exhibition. IUPUI also had their exhibition. John Parker mentioned there that some team with a dragon-like logo. John, it's Tiffin. Tiffin in Ohio. Yes, they won 81-77. We've been talking about Marcus Burke this whole time. Dude had 31 points.
Wow.
And Jalen Manette had 18. And the problem that they have is they had 27 turnovers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly. So it seems like ball handling might be a little bit of an issue.
Yeah.
Are we also going to talk? Oh, go ahead.
No, you first.
I was changing to the other game that I was hoping to talk about for a second. So you finish this thought.
Yeah. Which I'm a little surprised by. I thought for sure the guard play would be infinitely better. But nope, apparently it was not. So what are you gonna do there? But yeah, that's because Marcus Burke had 5 turnovers. Grant Weatherford had 5 turnovers. Jalen Manette had 5 turnovers, and Weatherford and Manette, you don't expect them to be coughing up the ball as much as they did. That's kind of concerning, especially considering the but when you got a guy who and I've been talking about how maybe Marcus Burke might carry the load that Cameron Justice did next year. Maybe, could be.
Yeah,
I might be apt to agree with that. But that's But yeah, go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry. I mean, sorry, not Mike. Matt.
I was also going to see if we want to talk for just a second. I was most impressed this week with Detroit Mercy coming out of their quote-unquote secret scrimmage with U of M.
Yes.
No actual reporters, so there's a couple little discrepancies in stats, but sounds like they ran U of M to the end. And you know what?
Wow.
That's impressive for them. I mean, you never know what was being worked on in the scrimmage. It sounds like U of M had a couple people that are out right now that they've probably been working with and all that, but still, that's a good scrimmage for them, and that could be a really bad sign for the league as far as if Detroit Mercy is going to keep that up, or that could be a great sign for the league depending on how you want to look at it. I mean, and it wasn't just Juan Davis. That's the thing.
Yeah, but they also got some good news too, because their transfer Justin Miller out of Louisiana Lafayette, he got his waiver granted. So
free Rashad.
Yeah, that's the whole waiver thing is So I want to kind of pivot. Yeah, and by the way, scrimmages are kind of a weird thing, and nobody really knows a lot about the secret ones. I know Youngstown State and Cleveland State were up in Eastern Michigan a little bit. I don't know a whole hell of a lot about either of those two, but all I know that they're there. But we'll probably see a lot more when they play their exhibitions. Cleveland State this week has got Notre Dame College. I can't remember who Youngstown State has or any of the other schools. But yeah, the fact that Detroit has it may not just be Antoine Davis and everybody else. I personally consider that an encouraging sign, because of the fact that like I've been saying, that 2 through 8 slots is just a wild card, and so and Detroit Mercy falls into that category. So that's that they are able to kind of go toe to toe with Michigan, in a scrimmage. I mean, I know it doesn't count, and I know we don't know a whole hell of a lot about it, but still, it's a very encouraging sign. But speaking of, and I wanted to get back into the whole transfer thing. Because I know for one thing, Um, we just got news apparently that Rasheem Dunn, who was who had transferred to Cleveland State from St. Francis to New York, and then decided he was going to he sit out a year and then decided to transfer away once Dennis Gates was hired. Will be sitting out another year because apparently the NCAA will be denying his transfer waiver to go to St. John's. So he's going to be sitting out 2 whole years. I'm not sure if I agree with that. In fact, I'm pretty sure I said I don't, just because the guy already sat out a year. I mean, but
this one comes back on Cleveland State, because from what I've heard, Cleveland State denied every one of those kids that transferred out of just pure pettiness. And so what we're seeing is most coaches are signing off on transfers, even if they didn't like it, even with the transfer portal. I can tell you firsthand that Braden Norris, when he transferred, we might not have liked it, but Campy told me, he goes, look, how many freshmen try their first year out of college and don't like it and they want to transfer? I'm not going to stop someone. And he signed off on those. Cleveland State is not signing off on waivers, and it's just providing an extra layer for the NCAA to deny these kids, and which is what we're going to see probably out of most of the CSU ones, including Rashad at some point. And it's awful. These kids deserve to play.
I mean, I don't know what to say about this, honestly, just because of the fact that it's like, all right, I mean, the atmosphere, and again, this goes back to what the hell did Dennis Felton do to start this, what the hell did he do that has never been public and is never going to be public? But you know what? If you're gonna get to a point where you're gonna deny a transfer waiver specifically to Rashad Williams, if that actually does happen, we haven't heard a decision about that. But I need a legitimate reason. I'm sorry, I do. I know it's my school. I want to know what the hell happened. I've been wanting to know what the hell happened, and nobody. I'm sorry we don't have. I'm sorry we don't have any news outlets who give a rat's ass about this. But yeah, I would like to know what the hell happened.
I can tell you what happened.
Well, I know what happened, but nobody's ever made it public.
We all know Felton and McLean were planning the world's biggest heist of a casino, and he wouldn't include these guys. And so they left. They said, you know what? If that's how you're going to play this game, villains, I'm out of here. We know it was heist related, of course.
It was heist related. Okay, let's go with heist related. So, yeah, yeah. Now, by the way, the heist continues for Dennis Felton at Fordham. Now he's an assistant coach over there now. So, MTA. So I'm sure that'll soften the blow in terms of his buyout. But yeah, I'm just still dumbfounded by the whole situation, and it's just, I mean, it didn't have to. I like what Dennis Gates is doing right now, in terms of kind of rebuilding this team, but the fact that it was even necessary is just absolutely bonkers. And I still cannot wrap my head around the whole entire situation. And I know I've talked about this so much, and and now we're getting into a season where, once again, Cleveland State is probably going to struggle a lot. And was it worth it to get the guy that they wanted? Maybe. I mean, like I said, the early returns are good, but we got to get to a point where we see how these kids are progressing. But yeah, I mean, it's just such a mess, and maybe it's good that nobody goes to the games, so nobody would have been able to see this in the beginning with. So I don't know.
Except the vicious Vikings. See, I just
except the vicious Vikings who thankfully have enough faith that they are moving forward, and I'm glad for them. Hopefully they do not start giving me crap when I start being very, 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 very frustrated, because it's coming. It's coming. All of you know this is coming. It's like the monsoon season. It's going to be rainy and crappy, and it happens every year. But yeah, that's kind of that whole situation. So I mean, yeah, it's looking sorry guys, it's looking even less and less likely that Rashad Williams will be joining the Grizz this year. I'm waiting for it, Matt. I know your your kind of thoughts on that are forthcoming. And I know that, and I'm just going to sit back and let you go, let it rip.
Not yet. Right now, I'm just going to stay optimistic and hope,
Yes.
that they free shot him. And then we'll talk about it if and when it happens the other way.
There you go.
Yeah,
so
that's all you can do.
Exactly. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the show. Michael, thank you very much for joining us. Tell everybody where they can find you and the Grizz Gang.
So Grizz Gang's on Twitter as OU Grizz Gang. That's where we do most of our stuff. We're on Instagram and Facebook as well, that you can find us pretty much by the same handle. And then I'm actually on it as well as MPrestonNZ44. Good luck spelling that. But it might be linked on the website that he posts up. But yeah, I'll be out there.
It will be. So yes. Take heart in the fact it will be. So yes. Or at least if you're on one of the podcast apps, I know the links don't go through, but at least the spelling will be, so you can copy and paste. You're good to go.
Yeah, exactly.
So speaking of which, of course, and now next week, I should note next week we will be having our annual student media forum. I'm looking forward to that. I know there's a couple of reporters who will not be able to make it, but I know the few that will are very excited about it, and we are, of course, excited to talk to them. But definitely stay tuned for that next week. You definitely don't want to miss it. 2 weeks from now, at the start of the season, we are actually going to have we've been talking about Detroit Mercy. We're going to have the play-by-play voice, Dan Hasty, on as well. So we're going to actually record that one before the season starts. So just a disclaimer, whatever we're talking about may or may not have already happened. So, but that's 2 weeks from now, and you definitely don't want to miss that. But as always, you can find episodes of the Horizon Roundtable on horizonroundtable.com, and definitely be sure to watch out. We've got new articles posted for each of the Horizon League schools, at least the ones we have, or we'll make John Parker write a bunch. We're not going to do that to you, John. Don't worry about it. But definitely horizonroundtable.com. You can find us wherever podcasts are available, and your Amazon Echo and your Google Home devices. You can definitely pull us up as well. So that's going to wrap it up for us, and thank you all for listening.
All right.